So, I guess for the second part, I wanted to focus on where the last one ended about how excessive sexualization and pre criminalization of young men who've been physically, emotionally, financially, or sexually abused in any shape, way, or form creates a lifelong pattern that not only cascades through their life but everybody else in their life. Right off the bat, I want to challenge anybody who listens to this because your first response is going to say, it's not our responsibility to make men better, to better society. To which I'd respond with a very honest and unfortunate point, and that is, if it's our job to make society a safer and better place for women and feminine people, which it is our job, everyone's job, to make society a safer place for women and feminine people, then you don't get to pick and choose. It's our job to make society a safer and healthier place for men and masculine people. I want to start and end this video with this point, which is that if you want to live in a world where men have no recourse, no healing, and no opportunity for their sexual brokenness, then you will live in that world because you already do. Coming from a family of people who are wire in my face. Coming from a family of people who very noticeably struggle with closet bisexuality, um, and I'm going to try not to name people, but pretty much everybody, coming from friend groups, both leftist and rightist, politically speaking, who struggle with closet bisexuality, coming from a line of people where there's a lot of alcoholic and childhood abuse, coming from certain villages in New Brunswick and cities in Ontario where this type of thing is proliferating at an alarming rate, the constant reminder is that not only are men responsible for upholding that base level of propriety and responsible for upholding that base level of safety for everyone, but we're also responsible for bearing the final and most extreme punishments for any misbehavior, be it physical, mental, or sexual. And this is coming from someone who, after being groomed and blackmailed by child predators on the internet, where my family ignored it for years on end, I was carefully selected by people in my high school whose slander and stalking campaign eventually got me drugged and gang raped. I hate that I have to use those censorship words, but it's just a fact. So I'm going to very bravely look you in the camera lens or the eye here and say, if you have the slightest inclination to disagree with me, you're wrong. This isn't one of those things where to get an opinion, you're just wrong. From the age of 12 all the way until my present age, 29, I have had people carefully calculate my worst mistakes at the age of 12, 13, 14, while 30-year-old men groomed me and turned me into a child corn star, and they decided to, instead of helping me, and thus enabling those men to abuse other young boys, instead of helping me, they decided to protect and in some cases even work with those men to establish a very long, long list of blackmail items, which were then used to justify me being drugged and assaulted by a group of men and women, where the footage was then distributed all across the internet next to my worst moments possible, and thus people have walked up to me in public openly celebrating me being drugged and assaulted by a group of mixed gender people. So if you have the slightest inclination to say that men don't go through the same thing women do, I'm sorry, maybe in the 60s you were right, but this is a bisexual world whether or not you want to admit it. The Me Too movement is glorious, it's necessary, it's important, but let's face the facts. The Me Too movement only applies to a small section of white and ethnically ambiguous upper middle class women who have access to platforms. It does not apply to black or indigenous or brown women. It does not apply to men, straight men, gay men, black men. It does not apply to disabled people, prisoners, etc. But that doesn't mean it's wrong. It means it's incomplete. I'm currently in a state where various types of technology, even certain types of experimental technology, have been used on me by high school students, university students, occupants, and staff workers at multiple homeless shelters to commit acts of sexual voyeurism, to commit acts of online trafficking, to commit acts of revenge porn, to commit acts of, in some cases, drug assault, physical assault, financial crimes. And at every point while I scream and I pound on the window, people keep asking me, did you do anything to deserve it? And then they say that that only happens to women, which, I'll grant you, the vast majority, based on my last study, about 85% of global human trafficking trends target women. This is true. However, back in the 1950s and 60s, global human trafficking trends, generally speaking, between most countries, based on my studies, targeted men between 5 to 8% of the time. Between 1950s to the 2020s, which is only a 70-year time span, so in one lifetime, we have gone from about 5 to 8% of the global human trafficking trends targeting women, or pardon me, targeting men, to about 15 to 20% based on conservative estimates in both developed countries and third world countries. Now, does that mean the vast majority of domestic violence, sexual violence, child abuse, trafficking, and coercion affect women? Yes, it does, in most cases, and I'll get to that in a second. However, the meteoric spike in demand from 5% to about 20% of all reported human trafficking organizations in one lifetime indicates a trend which, in one more lifetime, will mean that men are the target almost as frequently as women. If in 70 years, one lifetime, we've gone from 5% to 20% of globally reported human trafficking organizations targeting men, then in another 70 years, we could be anywhere between 25 to 40% of all known human trafficking cases targeting men. I have walked down the street while teenagers, children, minors, accuse me of being a PDF file after they brag about watching footage of my date rape. I have been at homeless shelters where people accuse me of being a sex worker who just took the wrong risk when in reality I have no recollection of either of those two nights. I have been made responsible for the sexual scarring of certain men and women in my life who have quite literally profited from my sexual exploitation. Now, there's certain MRA activists on the internet, and I won't name them because I don't want to disrespect them. We might have opposing views, and it agitates me. So let me say something on the feminist side. It really disgusts me that most MRA activists who are popular, not all, but most, spend the vast majority of their long winded time going off about this girl's entitled. She has an OnlyFans. She's not a high value woman. When in reality, I would love to see someone like those people, you probably know who I'm talking about, go off at length and genuinely try to describe the academic and also the socio-political perspective of male sexual abuse versus female. Because you want to know something really scary, guys? If you factor in prison systems, public schools, private schools, churches, and religious organizations, those four or five groups, public schools, private schools, prisons, reformatory, blah, 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 if you factor in those institutions, there's some countries in which men are sexually assaulted much more than women. And it gets really bad in the military too. So, this is where I want to walk away from most of the MRA stuff. Is this an excuse to go talk crap about the blonde Becky on OnlyFans who says a lot of really misandrous crap? No, let her get her bag, let her get her hustle, let her learn those lessons on her own. However, is this an excellent opportunity to talk about the genuinely extreme hypocrisy that some anti feminist movements pose toward the sexual solidarity and agency of both men and women? Yes, this is an excellent opportunity. Because if you're standing there and you're constantly saying that the only way to fix a man is to physically or sexually assault him in the same way he's been accused of doing other people, you are not a feminist. You are a misogynist. I don't care if you're cis, trans, black, white, male, female. If you think the antidote to grape is grape, you're a grapist. If you think the antidote to child abuse is abusing a child, you're a child abuser. If you think the antidote to stalking is to stalk someone, you're a stalker. What do men say after they've been proven to assault women? They say, "What was she wearing? She deserved it. She was on drugs. She has a bad history. She's known to lie. She was looking for money." It's all about the money. No one cares. It's all in the past. Yet, what are a lot of people saying about male victims who are trying to partake in the Me Too movement? We say, "Have you ever abused a woman? Have you ever sent some unsolicited pictures? Have you ever participated in a community that you weren't ready to participate in?" The simple truth is, all grapists have good reasons to grape someone. All voyeurs have good reasons to voyeur someone. I know that's not a noun, but all stalkers have good reasons to stalk someone. So if you have good reasons to violate someone sexually, we have a word for you, and it starts with an R or a P. After the early childhood and then the lifelong sexualization and criminalization which I endured, I know for a fact that not only did my primary abusers go on to groom and then blackmail and extort other victims, primarily younger men, but I also know that certain members of my family which overlooked it took that opportunity to not only sign me into certain, well, let's be delicate with my words, certain family members not only took that opportunity to try and render me vulnerable for data collection, and if you don't know what that means, don't worry, babe, but if you know what that means, you know what that means under Canadian law. Not only did certain members of my family and friend group decide to play vigilante justice, which only ever resulted in sexual voyeurism, because hey, let's watch a guy self stimulate in the privacy of his own bedroom while he's on drugs to prove that he's a creep. Let's watch a guy in the most private moments of his life to make sure that he's not doing anything wrong. And then when he meets a dude on Queen Street East in Toronto, let's sell it online just to make sure that he's not doing anything wrong. This has culminated to the point where, as I've said before, I've had teenagers, minors, walk up to me and accuse me of being a child abuser while they describe in graphic detail things that I don't even remember from the nights in which I was drugged and assaulted. I've had family members try and fill in the details of those nights, knowing full well that those family members are closet bisexual, and those men get to walk away saying, "Oh, we just took a look. It wasn't for personal reasons." Something that I find very venomous in my soul, but not in an unhealthy way, in a healthy way. Do you think a snake developed venom because it's evil? No, it developed venom because it has no arms and it wants to live. Do you think a rhino developed its horn to be a bully? No, a rhino developed its horn because it has no opposable thumbs and it wants to live. Something I find very venomous in my soul, but at the same time very justified, is not my opposition to what I call feminism, but my honest critique of it. Because I don't know if you guys can tell, but overall, I'm a cisgender dude. But would you sooner describe me as like butch masculine or kind of feminine? Obviously, overall, you'd probably say I'm somewhere a little bit more to the feminine side, depending on your sensibilities. Do you think I benefit from a world in which men are entitled to everyone's bodies? Absolutely not. I'll be the first one to go, and everyone will say that my abusers are straight. Do you know how many times I've had men and women violate my privacy, my boundaries, my devices, for all I know, maybe even my brain waves, and they get to say it's justice instead of admitting that they got a sense of psychological sexual control from it? I have to live in a state, just like many women, just like many men do, black, white, gay, trans, whatever, cisgender, Republican, conservative, Democrat. I have to live in a state, just like a lot of people, where I know that all someone has to do is document my worst mistakes, my worst moments, and they can stick it right next to footage of me being drugged and assaulted, and a bunch of 13, 14, 15-year-old boys and girls will finish self stimulating to it before they turn around and say that I'm the monster. And then when I try to get people to, investigate whether or not there's a fraudulent OnlyFans, they turn around and they say, "Leave it in the past. All you want is money. This is a lady problem." I'm really disappointed, not with the state of feminism. I'm disappointed with the misogynist people who call themselves feminist, male and female. I'm disappointed with the men's rights activists who are so busy attacking individual women rather than actually uplifting men. There's a lot of people who are known as the sort of kingpins or queenpins of the MRA community, where every time someone says, "Hey, can you platform my story? I'll make my story anonymous. You don't have to represent me in court. I'll strike out all the names. Can you please tell stories of male abuse survivors?" They say, "No, I'm just gonna sit there and rip apart the blonde Beckys." Which is sad because if you know who I'm talking about, I actually love that person. She's an icon to me. And I think it's totally okay that within a political or philosophical community, you can take hard shots against people who have a bigger reach than you while simultaneously adoring their work and still being critical of, as what's her face there said, the more pernicious or persnickety aspects of it. God, what was her name? Anita Sarkeesian. God, she has the most beautiful lips. I am jealous of that queen. Anyway, it's okay to simultaneously enjoy the content of a political or philosophical movement while remaining critical of the persnickety or pernicious or denigrating aspects of it. It sickens me to know that a lot of the girls and boys I went to high school with 15 years ago have taken turns recruiting my family and roommates to participate in what amounts to sexual voyeurism under the guise of justice, while people profit from it, and then a whole bunch of men and women who simultaneously want me to die derive a sense of pleasure from it, and then they move on with their lives while saying that they're a good leftist or a good rightist. So I'm going to say one last time, just like I opened this video, if you want to live in a world where there's no healing, forgiveness, there's no psychological care, there's no remediation, there's no refutation, there's no path forward for men with broken sexualities, if you want to live in a world where men with broken sexualities have no path forward, then just sit back, babe, because you already live in that world. God bless.